We're talking industrial and commercial with Matt Quinlan from Parsons Commercial. We're going to be talking about the Route 3 corridor from Burlington up to Lowell. Matt, the Boston market has been on fire the past several years, in all sectors, and we've just seen tremendous growth. I know, at Parsons, you in particular, you and your group, you've been in the thick of the Boston real estate market. Your particular niche is the Route 3 corridor. Yep. Chelmsford, Billerica, Lowell, so on and so forth, out to Tewksbury, that whole stretch. How are you seeing things?
The market's strong right now, and I think we're going to talk a little office and industrial. From an office perspective, what we're seeing is that 7 or 8 years ago, there was that downturn in the economy, and a lot of these companies that were in this market sort of had a flight to quality.
Absolutely.
They went down to the city, they went into 128 Burlington and Waltham, and those markets exploded. Well, now those tenants are up for renewal, and they're starting to get a little sticker shock when their rents are coming up, and they're seeing some value by moving up north a little bit, up Route 3, up 495, into Chelmsford and Billerica, where you can still get reasonable rents and get a good quality product.
Right. Well, as you know, I personally have real estate in the Chelmsford market, so we're actually experiencing exactly what you're talking about. We've all of a sudden seen a preponderance or plethora of tenants coming out of what you say, the sticker shock. The sticker shock is pushing them outside of the greater Boston area.
Yep.
And what we witnessed for a long time was there was a relatively high vacancy in the area, but the high vacancy was due to a lot of the buildings were an older addition that were probably built back 30 years ago and lent themselves better to big floor plates.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think you and I were talking beforehand, and we're seeing an awful lot of tenants in the market that are probably in that 10 to 15,000, 5 to 15,000.
Yep. I think that's the bulk of the tenants in the market, and it's funny because it's a market that, as you just mentioned, has sort of lent itself to these big blocks of space. And there's a lot of landlords in that market that are either unwilling or unable to break up those blocks of space and capture that 5 to even 20,000 square foot tenant. So a lot of these groups are sort of out there floating around, and some of the big block vacancy that's been available for a long time hasn't really come off. You haven't seen the absorption there come off because they can't really accommodate those size tenants.
Now at Parsons, you typically, you personally, you've been on the tenant representation side.
Yep. So I started my career doing only tenant rep for about the first 5 years of my career. When I joined SVN Parsons about 3 years ago, I got into the landlord side of things a little bit. So we do take on some product. I represent Omniway in Chelmsford and some other.
Which you've had great success with.
We have. We purchased at auction in December. And since then, we've done just about 160,000 square feet of leasing, I believe, from that point on.
Now, in the Chelmsford market, I know that they've rezoned right off of the Route 3 corridor.
Yep.
To allow for a lot more flexibility in what can be used on some of the different sites.
Yep.
And I know the town of Chelmsford is going doing everything they can to work with landlords to promote growth in the market.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And I think what they're really looking to do is they're trying to get some amenities to the area. They're trying to get some more restaurants to come in. They're trying to get some retail. And if they're able to drive that sort of amenity-rich environment, and not to the extent that it was done in Burlington or elsewhere, but just to get that sort of model, I think that they'll be able to attract a lot more tenants to the area. That's often been a conversation with tenants is, hey, that Route 3 corridor, the pricing's great, but the amenities are lacking, and I think Chelmsford's recognized that, and they're trying to bring that to fruition and try to land some more tenants.
Along the Route 3 corridor, obviously we've got Burlington, north. How do you see the individual towns? You've got Billerica, Chelmsford. Where was the vacancy? Where is the vacancy now, and where do you see it going?
Sure. So obviously, the closer you get down to 128 in Burlington and Bedford, I think that the vacancy was the first to rebound. There was that rebound effect when the economy started to come back, and those were the markets that were strengthened first, and their rents grew more quickly. Chelmsford, Billerica lagged behind a little bit, and now that we're a couple years into this growth cycle here, we're starting to see those tenants migrate even further north, and I think that the absorption, and I think that the tenants in Chelmsford are going to remain. The ones that are here now are going to stay, and I think that there's going to be continued growth.
Yeah, yeah. And we're seeing a lot of tenants stick in our properties, you know, in all the different sectors because, you know, just the costs associated with moving, you know, certainly if you're moving out of, you know, a high rent to a lower rent, you know, out of the city, that's one consideration. But to just make a lateral move within an existing town, I don't see landlords, you know, I'd venture to say, you know, it's sort of a little bit of a landlord's market in that I just don't see the landlords either you know, they're unwilling or unable, probably more so unwilling to make the concessions because the tenants just don't have the options like they did in years past.
Sure, and I think a big trigger point in that Route 3 corridor was when Kronos moved to Lowell.
Absolutely.
So they vacated so much space on Omni Way and on Bill Ricker Road, and we've seen, and what makes me optimistic about that Chelmsford specifically is that we've seen sort of the backfill of that space. DCU bought the Kronos building on Bill Ricker Road, and the way we've been able to do some work on Omni Way and backfill that space, I think that it's turning. It left a big hole, but I think that that's coming around now.
Yeah. So what's your forecast for the, you know, moving forward for the next 12 to 24 months?
So I try not to look out too much further than 12 months. I like to know what's coming in the next 12. And I think that there's going to be some continued rent growth in the office side. The industrial side, absolutely, there's going to be continued rent growth. There's just not enough product to support the demand.
No, there's definitely not.
Yeah, so we're seeing, you know, even traditionally, you know, $5-6 triple net markets like Haverhill, we're doing deals in 9-10 triple net.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Hey, if you could find me some industrial properties, I mean, you know, I'd certainly like to develop some. That's for sure.
It's the sector to be in right now.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah, so you know, the demand from a tenant perspective is very high.
Well, let's talk about the industrial sector for a second, okay? You know, a lot of the buildings that, at least in my experience, and we haven't done a lot of industrial for a long time, so it's not one of our you know, current food groups. But you know, there were a lot of buildings out there that were, you know, functionally obsolete for a while from a ceiling height standpoint and whatnot. So what right now do you see as the, you know, the sweet spot type industrial building?
Yeah, anything that's north of, you know, a 20-foot clear height is what people are looking for.
Right.
We have, you know, a couple spots that we've had great success with that are both 24-foot clear. Got groups that are coming out now and trying to spec their warehouse needs. There's some groups that are looking to go 30 feet high.
I was going to say, yeah, at least.
They're looking at it as cubic feet instead of square footage. So
and
if they can rack higher, then that's what they're looking for and save on their footprint and costs that way.
Tough to find land to do it.
Very tough to find land to do it, and the cost of construction is so high right now that
it's almost prohibitive.
Exactly. Building spec warehouse, by the time you're done building that building, is the market going to be able to hold the rents to support it?
So is most of the industrial that you have done, is that for users buying buildings for themselves, or are there development opportunities, investment opportunities, a little of both?
We're doing a little bit of everything. So typically we're representing things on the leasing side, and we put a property on in Haverhill for lease, about 30,000 square feet, and I think we had 6 showings in the first week.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great, but it's 24-foot clear. It's a nice, clean warehouse space, and that's really hard to come by, especially in that market. I mean, it is across the state, but in that market, it's very difficult.
And is that one user, or is that multiple users?
So I think we're going to end up with multiple users, which is nice from a landlord perspective.
Perfect, absolutely.
It diversifies a little bit.
Sure.
But we've seen users from, you know, 8,000 square feet to 30,000 square feet and more that can't find the space, and their options are so limited that they're having to travel outside their desired geography to get the space that they're looking for.
Yeah, we used to, you know, in our past, we had the industrial buildings, you know, they were, you know, 30, 40,000 foot buildings, and we'd subdivide them down to, you know, 4,000 foot bays, and, you know, maybe 10% office up front, you know, drive-in in the back, and, you know, it was for the general contractor or, you know, any number of other, and it was just it's one of the best food groups out there from a landlord investor standpoint.
Absolutely. It's a low cost option, and then your return is usually significantly higher. You're not spending a ton of money in tenant improvements, and your carry costs are lower in those downtimes. So it's a attractive group right now.
What's the vacancy rate on industrial in that corridor right now? It's got to be extremely low.
It's extremely low. I don't have a number to put on it. I haven't run the stats recently, but it's extremely low right now. There's not a lot of options. You start talking about, and even you talk about trying to find a 3,000 square foot industrial spot for a contractor bay. nearly impossible to find.
Can't find it. No, I know that corridor very, very well. And, as you and I were just, we've been talking, it just in all of the real estate sectors, whether it's the commercial, the industrial, the retail, it's just that Route 3 corridor has just gotten so tight over the past several years.
It has.
It's fantastic to see.
has.
And, we're currently looking for a lot more in that market because we happen to like it. But it's just, it's hard from a pricing standpoint to make deals that make sense, find deals that make sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially with the rent growth that's happened over the last 8 years, and it was at one point you're doing $15 gross deals in that market, and now you're looking a lot of times those office rents start with a 2 in front of them.
Absolutely,
and it's hard to see how long that growth is going to hold.
Well, the Parsons Group, you guys have always had a great name in the Boston real estate market, but I certainly know that you and your group in the Route 3 sector, like I said, I know you guys have other markets, but you personally have done very, very well. And, I commend you on the hard work that Parsons has done out that way, because you've certainly helped all of us landlords by, leasing up all these buildings and keeping, sort of getting the vacancy down and sort of shifting it to a landlord's market.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, we've worked really hard at it, and we've been very fortunate. But we have a great team, and we had some luck meet some opportunity and hard work, and it came together, and we're pretty excited about the project.
Well, good luck with it, and I appreciate you coming in, and I hope you stop back and chat with us soon and update us with more good news on the Route 3 corridor.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.